listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
And I'm Rachel.
So we have a special Iron Ladle because this is like a part 2 to the part 1 that we had last week.
Mm-hmm.
Erin, what are we doing today?
Well, Mary Kruta, we asked her to give us a dessert that would be sort of a classic Easter dessert. And she felt that the one that we should tackle that would not be too ambitious, and we can all weigh in on the results of that assessment, would be carrot cake. So that's what we did. We decided carrot cake would be our theme for this episode. But since we knew we'd all be spread out and we all have different desires for carrot cake, so we did not try and make this just a single recipe that we're all making. So we have each attempted our own version of carrot cake, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. I don't know. I had never made carrot cake before that I can remember. And as I like to do, I decided, why start with the simple approach when I could take the most challenging approach? That is how I approach my creative projects. Why start at a simple, 9 by 13 carrot cake when I could make a triple layer carrot cake? And so that is what I chose to do. But I did it. And so the ladies who are out there somehow thinking that's not possible, I'm here to tell you it's possible. I did injure myself. I did. While trying to level my cakes, I managed to nick my palm this morning. Turns out my knife is sharper than I realized, but yeah.
That is not the injury that I came away with, and nor the one that I was expecting you to declare. Well,
yeah.
All right.
I mean, there's many, honestly, to be fair, this recipe, I feel, does have a number of potential pitfall areas, like areas that you could injure yourself. The shredding of the carrots, and I have many scarred knuckles from my shredder, but I didn't do that this time. The burning from the oven, another potential possibility. You could get your tongue tangled up in those beaters.
A couple of those happened, but I'll save my stories till the end.
Yes. So I want to hear about how your carrot cake adventures went. What approach did you take to a carrot cake Easter dessert?
Well, I feel like, first of all, I think Mary Kruta is spot on in terms of the accessibility of a recipe like this, because literally, we recorded that episode on a Friday, and then Monday, today, 2 to 3 days later, here we are recording this thing.
We've all done this. Mm-hmm.
I was going to be a jerk and be like, I'm going to do a lamb cake. When I committed to that, I didn't realize we had like Monday until Monday to do it. So I was like, you know what? Just whatever. So I actually used a box mix and it turned out all right. I modified it. If we're going to talk about modifications now, if you want to know. So I used just a standard like grocery store boxed mix, and
I love a modification.
Yeah. So I just added the standard amount of oil and the standard amount of eggs. But if you know me at all, I'm a pineapples person, for better or worse. And so for the water measurement, I did half water and half pineapple juice.
Ooh.
I was not entirely confident that adding crushed pineapple, even though the box encouraged me to try that, I wasn't sure how that was going to mess up the moisture factor or whatever. So that part turned out pretty dang great. I threw in probably a cup of pecan chips, and that was a great addition. The frosting. Let's talk about frosting for 1 second, okay? Because I feel like this was maybe my downfall. So the cakes turned out great. 3 very thick layers. So it was going to be a very tall cake. I am not a cream cheese.
Pans.
They what?
How big were your pans?
They were 8.5.
Okay.
Also, I used a double recipe for all.
Oh, okay. Okay. I gotcha.
I don't know that was the source of the issue, but I did double it because I wanted a glorious
cake. I understand the desire.
So I am not a cream cheese frosting person. I will eat it if it comes on carrot cake at like a restaurant. Like that's the one time. So I used buttercream frosting in a can, but I wanted to, here I am flying close to the sun. I wanted to spice it up a little bit. And so I took a can of drained pineapple chunks and I whipped it up in the frosting and I added some more pecan chips to the frosting.
You made cement.
I made cement. All right. It's delicious. It wasn't pineapple-y enough, so I added several splashes of pineapple juice out of the can that I had. I whipped some more.
You didn't fly close to the sun. You can't smack dab into it.
Listen, it doesn't. That's not even the worst part, guys. That's not even the worst part. So then I was like, I was feeling real good, right? I'm like, man, this is awesome.
Delicious.
This is what I'm going to do. So I've got these cakes pulled out. They're cooled. They're room temperature.
Yeah.
And you ever see those fancy like cake makers? They take like a sugar syrup or something and they apply like a layer of it. You need to
okay.
I was like, I'm going to use pineapple juice and do that sort of move, right? Like a permeating the pineapple taste throughout, right? Well, it worked for the first couple of layers, but man, that third layer at the top, there was something about, I maybe just used a little too much pineapple juice because I started frosting that baby. And the third layer, like I call it the Great Earth Cake of 2023, and like half the cake rolled down. And just the whole inside was laid bare. So it kind of, I guess, in a way, is like the start of if I were to like carve out a lamb, start of it, but I didn't really commit. So it's kind of, it was like a rhombus, really. It was like a rhombus of deliciousness.
Okay.
Was it all hands-on geology experiment?
I mean, it's delicious. It's gigantic. It's going to take me forever to finish it. I was feeling a little inspired and I bought some Jell-O brand jelly beans and I was going to make like this like minimalist, like polka dot little.
You're going to be minimalist. What are you talking
about? Well, that was before the cake like split apart and fell on itself.
You can't do minimalism with jelly beans.
Well, it's definitely not. Like I just sort of haphazardly threw them at the cake because by that point I was so just ticked off. I like emerald some jelly beans onto the cake because I was done. But it's really good.
Impressionism right there.
Very much so.
Wow.
But I honestly, had I followed the directions a little bit more, it was not as bold as I was. It would have been awesome. Still delicious.
Yeah.
So I got that going for me.
So I have a question about this, though. Is it still a carrot cake if you added pineapple to the cake batter and pineapple to the frosting and then put a pineapple glaze between the layers?
So
I'm not saying there isn't carrot.
No, because I looked it up. I looked it up because there are a variety of other like humming. I was like, is this more like a hummingbird cake?
Yeah, okay.
That's more of like a banana base, apparently.
Okay.
I used a carrot cake base, so that's what I'm going with. That's the story.
So carrots were included in the mix?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, these were box carrot cake mixes.
It kind of sounds to me like you would really like to make a pineapple cake.
I would love to make a pineapple cake. No,
maybe that should be your Easter dessert. I've got a great recipe for you.
Yes. Love it.
From my like AAL Kids cookbook.
Yes. Nice.
Nice. Okay. Excellent. You know, Brie, I'm sure that even though it is, what if you took the approach of since this is an Easter dessert, what if this is somehow like the earthquake?
Listen, I kind of
Easter or the like open tomb cake, something like that.
It kind of looks like Golgotha. Like if I saw it, if I saw the Golgotha in cake form, I didn't want to be disrespectful about it, but that's definitely where my mind went.
I mean, I have often put a Golgotha representation on an Easter egg drawn in crayon, and that hasn't felt disrespectful. So
true. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Slice of a skull carrot cake.
I would actually really like to try a slice of your cake. It sounds
oh my gosh, it's so good.
Exactly.
I'm so hungry right now.
All that pineapple taste.
Very moist. It's very
love
moist.
Pineapple.
Okay, then I should go next.
Yeah, tell me about your experience, Rachel.
So I decided I wanted to bake a carrot cake from scratch because I've never done one from scratch before. I've used a mix once or twice and it turned out good. But I didn't want to spend all day reading through recipes. So I said, I'm going to search carrot cake recipe, and whatever Google serves me up top is going to be my recipe. And it came from inspiredtaste.net. And it's called Incredibly Moist and Easy Carrot Cake. I thought, well, that sounds good. Let's do that.
Okay.
So I'll put a link to this in our show notes, but it ended up a double layer cake with cream cheese frosting and had a fairly simple recipe for the batter, very similar to zucchini bread, which is actually kind of what it ended up tasting a bit like at the end of the day. Flour, soda, salt, cinnamon. That was the only spice it called for, and I thought that can't be right. So I added in a little ginger and a little nutmeg as well. And if I make it again, I'm going to about double the cinnamon and definitely include those other spices. Unfortunately, I was so excited to get the spices in there that I forgot then to add the vanilla extract, which ended up being a mistake. Because that would have definitely helped a lot. And it called for 3 cups of grated peeled carrots.
Okay.
Just 5 to 6 medium carrots. Now, I buy carrots by 5 pounds at a time. So I always have carrots around. Unfortunately, yesterday when I was baking this cake, I had 1 big fat carrot, 2 medium-sized carrots, and 3 little runty carrots. And so I made that do it. It came out to about 2.5 cups of grated. And I did it with a hand grater because I thought that would create maximum moistness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Only lost a little bit of fingernail into the into the grater. Scraped my knuckle. Yes, as you said.
Yes.
But it was a good and simple recipe. Now the other qualification this recipe needed was it couldn't have any fancy add-ins because I knew I would be sharing this cake with several young people. So I needed one with no pineapple, no coconut, no nuts, no raisins, nothing fancy. If they could have made me leave out the carrot and just had a basic cake with cream cheese frosting, they would have probably been okay with that. But no, it had to have carrot. So I baked it up, and I know that my oven runs a little hot. So I put it in at 350. It said to bake it for 35 to 45 minutes, and I just put it on the bare minimum, 35 minutes. What was the one thing Mary Kruta told us not to do with carrot cake? Don't overbake it. She said don't overbake it. And you know what my oven did? Overbaked it. It overbaked it. It's still good, but I keep it's.
You mean some of that pineapple syrup?
Yeah, a little pineapple syrup. And as I was hearing you tell that story, I was like, I should have done that when I was frosting it. But the frosting almost makes up for it. Okay. Because this was I've made cream cheese frosting before, cream cheese, butter, powdered sugar. This one called for cream cheese, powdered sugar, and heavy whipping cream. So it was basically a cream cheese whipped cream frosting. So it wasn't as thick as it was kind of goopy, which I guess was good since the cake was kind of dry. But it was really, really good. And I did, since I'd left the vanilla out of the batter, I added vanilla to the frosting. And I was very happy with that choice too. Yeah. And because my mother always did this, I also always put a sprinkle of salt in my frosting. And that was good too. So the frosting was great. And I assembled the cake and it came together. But then as soon as I took a slice and started eating it last night, there was just no denying it was overbaked. And it was not as moist and gooey. And so the flavors were not coming through the way they should have. But the good news is that I had another piece today. And that goopy frosting helped to start. It's still not as moist as it should be, but it was much better because when you let the frosting and the cake gel for a little bit longer, it sort of has that effect of the syrup sort of seeping in to the layers of cake and definitely softens it up a little.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good recipe. Was it moist? No. Was it easy? Yes. So I want to try it again because I'd always had this idea like carrot cake from scratch was really hard. And it really isn't. It's so achievable. Mm-hmm. And when you glop on the cream cheese frosting, really, it wouldn't matter if it was just zucchini bread in the end because it's going to be delicious.
We're fooling ourselves when we call zucchini bread bread. It is absolutely cake.
Yes.
So, yes, it makes total sense that you found such similarity there.
Some frostings you can just put on a shoe and it's delicious.
It's true. Shoe leather plus cream cheese frosting. I would be okay with that. Unlike Brie, I really, really love cream cheese frosting. It's like my favorite.
Yeah.
I do too.
Put it on a saltine cracker and I'm good to go. That is a dessert. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But that was my adventure. I'm glad I did it. Thank you, Mary Kruta, for inviting me to tackle this culinary adventure that has been long overdue for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
I guess it's my turn then.
Yeah.
So cake isn't really a thing in my life, et cetera, because baking soda, baking powder, all the fun ingredients. However, I do have my standard cookie recipe that is super delicious. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, I might as well just add carrots to this and see what happens. So I did not go the hand grinding route for the carrots. I've done that once in my life and I hated it so much. So I decided not to do that. We own a food processor, and so I enlisted my husband, who now requires a tax if he helps me to make food. He requires that he eat part of it, which is totally fine. Right, yeah. So he shredded the carrots. I used baby carrots because I didn't want to buy anything extra for this.
If I had used baby carrots, I would not have fingers left right now.
Yeah, no, that's part of the reason why we used food processor, because there's no way you would have fingers left if you hand shredded baby carrots. Bad idea. So I don't even know how much he shredded. It ended up being way too much. He just ate the rest of it. But I made, like, he was literally eating shredded carrots out of our food processor bowl. I love him. So I used to do my general cookie recipe that's almond flour, olive oil, maple syrup, vanilla, salt, and just mix that all together. And then I only used about half of the dough for the batter, I guess, for the carrot cookies because I wasn't sure how this was going to work. So we just kind of eyeballed the amount of carrot that we put in it. I did not measure at all. And I just put them on the pan. So normally I bake these at 350 for 10 minutes in my toaster oven. I did them for 10 minutes and they were still like gloopy. So then I did them for another 5 and they were still not done. Then I did them for another 3 and they were mostly done and we really wanted to eat dinner. So I pulled them out.
Carrots.
Yeah, carrots had a lot of moisture. So they probably could have gone for another like 2 or 3 minutes and still not burned. They were not my favorite variety of cookie that I've made. I think my blueberry ones, same thing, just adding blueberries. Those are really good. These needed extra sweetener in them, and I think that would have made it really good. Oh, I forgot. I added ginger too. I added
good move.
A whole teaspoon of ginger to like a very small amount of batter. So they were very gingery.
I should have added a whole teaspoon of ginger.
Yeah. So they were basically like carrot ginger cookies they didn't really taste like traditional carrot cake. But my husband loves them. He keeps eating them. And he's like, we should make these again. So they passed the Luther test. So I guess they're good. We do need to add more sweetener. Yeah. So I personally, like back before I had food issues, whatever, I love carrot cake. It's one of my favorites. I think I've requested it for my birthday before and I've made it from scratch. And you're right, it is really easy. And I love cream cheese frosting. So I was like imagining that I was eating real carrot cake. But yeah, they're good. I still got one left on the stove that will probably get eaten today. So
excellent.
2 thumbs up.
Well, like Rachel, I decided to go looking for a carrot cake recipe. I didn't have a go-to one. I did decide I wanted to really push myself to not just default to my usual Smitten Kitchen as a source. And instead, I selected the carrot cake recipe from Sally's Baking Addiction. Baking Addiction, not addiction.
Oh, solid source.
Baking Addiction. And it turned out great. It was a recipe where it showed 3 layers and I was like, I'm going to make 3 layers. So I bought 3 cake pans so I could accomplish this without spending, 2 days just baking cakes. And it did turn out well. My oven, I really feel I probably should have found smaller cake pans, but Target didn't offer multiple sizes. They offered one size. But it was a bit of a tight squeeze to get all of my cakes on one rack. So I rotated them because then I was like, are they going to bake easily? So I rotated them. Anyway, they turned out fine. One of them, I think, maybe got pushed up a little somehow on the edge. It baked a little slanty by the time it set up initially when it was a little slanted. So I had to carve off a fair amount of that one to make it level. But she had great suggestions as far as lining the pan with parchment and how to go about doing that. And it was all very straightforward. I found it easy to follow. I did want to add all this stuff. And I tried to remember Mary's advice about not overdoing it with the additions and that can make your cake sort of gloopy. And that was a risk, but I just couldn't hold back.
So what did you put in it?
So I did put in the carrots, and I also shredded my carrots with my little shredder because I don't have if I had had a food processor, I absolutely would have used it, but I didn't. So carrots and pecan chips, which I toasted. That was a suggestion that she gave, and I did that. It was delicious. And then I also added in pineapple. The recipe was made to use applesauce as part of the moist ingredients.
I've heard of that.
But it did comment that if you want, you could substitute pineapple, just use a pineapple that's going to give you about the same amount of liquid as an applesauce would.
Interesting.
So I chose to use the crushed pineapple because I'm like, that's essentially the same as applesauce as far as consistency goes. And then I like raisins, so I wanted the raisins. And another recipe had suggested plumping the raisins to make sure they aren't, hard and chewy. So I probably should have started that earlier in the process, but still I got that started when I started prepping stuff. And I like to think that maybe it helped a little bit. I did not have any coconut, and I decided I would not. Coconut might make it go a little too far. So I did hold back and not add the coconut, but I added everything else. And it turned out great. The cream cheese frosting was delicious. Frosting the side of a cake is very challenging. I did that at work, actually, because I was worried about transporting the cake already frosted. I thought that might be a recipe for disaster. And so I layered up the cake at home this morning, but then I brought the frosting with me and did that here. And it is very hard, and I didn't anyway.
It's not hard if you don't care how it looks.
Well, that's true, but even then,
I thought it was pretty easy, but then it looked really awful when I was done.
Yeah, and even with my efforts of leveling the cake, I didn't have one of the special tools that really help you ensure it's level. I was just sort of eyeballing it with a big old serrated knife, and it was still a little lopsided. But again, I was like, the pursuit of perfection is a losing battle, Erin. So I forbade myself from trying to make it any more level. And it did. It turned out great. Oh, here, I can show you. We're none of us together today, so I can't give you a taste of this, but I just dropped my picture that I took in the office. So I dropped that into the chat so you can see a picture of what the cake looks like. And it turned out, it was delicious. Rachel, part of why I liked this recipe, like you, I like the spices. And so
that's beautiful.
I did increase the amount of cinnamon that it called for. It called for 1.5 teaspoons. I was like, 2 teaspoons it is. But it also called for ginger and called for nutmeg, which I don't have any ground nutmeg. And I was done with the shredding and grinding myself. So grating. So I decided to use mace because mace grows on nutmegs. So I figured they've got to have some sort of similarity in flavor. And cloves. It called for cloves as well. So it had
I should have
4
done
different
that.
spices in it, which I think definitely helps the deliciousness. It was very sweet. If I were making it again, I like the cream cheese. I would cut down on the sugar on either the frosting or the cake. I don't know which. Maybe it would be the frosting because then I don't know. I would give some thought to it, but I feel like if anything, it was just a little too sweet. But that's a quibble. So, and I don't know that most people would actually have it. It is delicious. It does make it hard to eat a very large amount of it though, which, maybe that's not a bad thing.
Try me. I really love carrot cake.
Yes. Yes. Anyway, I encourage all of you to make yourself carrot cake or tackle another cake. They are not as intimidating as we make it out to be when we talk about recipes and formulas and so forth. There's a lot of forgiveness, and you know what? Even if it goes wrong, it usually still tastes good. So
True.
Go for it.
I did a lot of things wrong, and this cake is going to be gone by the end of the day.
Yes.
Because homemade, even if stuff goes wrong, it's still better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Homemade or home-modded.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Ladies, we want to know, do you love carrot cake as much as we all do now? Have you made it from scratch? Do you frequently shred your hands when you're shredding carrot? Do you have any pro tips for shredding carrots other than a food processor? We want to know these things. Join us in our Facebook group, the Lutheran Ladies Lounge. Share your thoughts with us there. You can also follow us on Instagram at Lutheran Ladies Lounge. Show us your Easter desserts, and we'll share them in our story if you tag us. You can also sign up for our e-newsletter in the show notes for this episode, or you can send us an email, lutheranladies@kfuo.org, and we'll get you signed up for that e-newsletter. You can find all of our podcasts at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge, or on your favorite podcasting app, or on the KFUO radio app. You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
I'm sorry, I'm a little carrot cake.
Yes.
Views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a review for us too. If you love the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast, consider financially supporting our producer, KFUO Radio, so we can keep doing what we do. Find out how at kfuo.org/give.